Traveling the vortex.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I fell asleep. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It had been a long and lousy week. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Things didn't go the way I planned. But most of all, I'm sorry. This apology sounds really canned.
Bravo.
So you fulfilled two things this week. An apology, which you did not have to apologize to us.
I did have to apologize to
It's
you.
the listeners.
I apologize to everyone within the sound of my voice.
And
'Cause,
I think someone was asking about a song maybe this week.
Yeah,
So there you go.
There we go.
Checkbox.
I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
We've landed at episode number
343.
Yeah, I didn't do that part.
No,
Well, that's all right.
384. What am I saying? I don't know where
384, 343.
I don't know where
We've gone
343
back
came.
in time.
Keith is asleep this week.
I couldn't remember what
I
it was.
could
so.
feel like I could.
So, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
We all got to see Solo.
Yeah.
Yay! What'd you guys think?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, especially
went-
considering my concern about it.
I went into it with high expectation, or with low expectation. I went into it with low, very, very low expectations, and
So low
it
expectations.
yeah, well, and it
I see what you did there.
it went above and beyond where it even had to go in order for me to just basically like it. So I think it's a fun film and very
Yeah.
worthy of being in the Star Wars.
I'm glad to hear you say that because one of the concerns I've had, I loved it. And one of the concerns I've had is maybe I loved it so much because my expectations were
I kind of
We're
wondered
pretty
about that myself,
lowballed.
but this
Yeah.
one even higher than what I would have gone. Okay, this is better than I expected.
But yeah, it hit all the emotional notes that I needed. And yes, there were some things that were, okay, I know we're going to get this bit. There were just certain check boxes that you could know going into it that they were going to do. And they did, but they did them in a slightly different way than I think what most people would have assumed was going to happen.
I was very surprised by all the twists and turns throughout most of it.
Which
There
is
was a lot that I did not expect to happen that did.
a little unfortunate in a way that the twists and turns part of it was so well done, and yet the heist part of it felt very lazy.
Yeah.
The pacing was phenomenal. It was so much better paced than both Rogue One and Last Jedi.
What's amazing about the film is it starts off and it feels all right. The music even gradually gradually feels like a Star Wars film as you go through
I would
it.
agree.
It doesn't feel like it when you start off, but by the end, same thing with his performance. He doesn't feel like Han Solo, but by the end of the film, he feels like he's Han Solo.
But yeah, just top to bottom, and I feel bad that these fans are out there. Once again, that small but vocal group of people. Star Wars. It's like, guys, it's fun.
Yep.
It's just
Oh,
a
yeah.
Good
fun
popcorn flick,
popcorn
and
movie.
it fits right in the Star Wars universe.
What's funny is Last Jedi challenged their views of Star Wars too much, and then we go back to kind of status quo, and they still aren't happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to news.
Oh, a whole heap of news this week. If you haven't already started watching, Twitch has started a marathon of Doctor Who, classic Doctor Who. They're already 1 week down, but it's going to go for 7 weeks until July 23rd.
And I did manage to tune in for a little bit of day 2 and was quite surprised when An Unearthly Child started. And I went, what? I thought you were marathoning these. The entire
So how
Twitch stream broke. Nobody knew what was happening. And then it went away. And then everybody realized that they had started an hour early. So they had jumped the gun and apparently replayed. So they just stopped midstream and then restarted with I
So
think it
how
was
it's working
Keith
is they have a list of stories that they're doing each day, and they're doing 3 runs of these stories each day. So if you miss the first run or the second run, you have a chance to watch them at some point.
Okay, that's cool.
And then there are also some pre-show content hosted by Yogcast, and they're going to have some celebrities come on, like Katie Manning, to talk about the show and all sorts of different stuff as they march their way through the series.
Did you guys tune in and
I
watch
did.
any of
I
this?
tuned in a
Little
little
bit.
bit on Friday. So.
What, did you happen to notice the comments over? I can't keep track of the. It's like
It goes
move-
too quick.
they move
It's
too
it's
quickly
like
for
Friday
me.
Night Who on crack. It's just like, yeah, I can't even bother. But one of the things that really shocked and amazed me was how many of these viewers had
Or new.
obviously never
Yep.
seen
Yeah.
a Classic Who episode,
Yep.
or at least this early.
I loved that.
That was
just
very cool.
Really cool
And
watching.
there were
the
a lot of
Critter
people
swing.
shipping
Yeah, the
Ian
swings.
and Barbara that
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw.
Yep.
That was great.
So I didn't have Twitch before this. They got me to download the app and sign up.
I still won't be going to Twitch Premium, but yeah.
Oh, no.
No, actually,
I'll probably uninstall after this is done.
I've
but-
had Twitch for a long time, and part of that's because I have game watching kids. So
Yeah,
they
yeah.
watch people play games all the time.
I just watched it on my computer. Went to the website. I didn't download anything. But isn't it on the 360 or the
I have it on
Xbox
the
One?
PlayStation
It's on
3,
the
but
Xbox
I couldn't
One.
get my
The game-
app to load
Oh,
properly.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Xbox was really embracing it until they created their own reach, which is their kind of their
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Twitch was really integrated into it, but recently it's a little harder to find Twitch on there, but it's still on there. Yeah.
Okay. Not that I'll have a chance to watch at home, but
So if you go to DoctorWho.tv, there's an article about it, and you can see the schedule of what's going to air when, if you're interested. It is only Monday through Friday,
okay.
just so you know. If you go on the weekend, you're going to be disappointed.
You'll have to watch regular gamers.
Yes.
Doesn't Twitch have something like 9,000 channels? That this is just one of them, or is it just a stream?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I
More
think
than
pretty much
probably,
anybody.
There's probably
You
more
can-
than 9,000. You could set up. We could have a Twitch channel right now and stream us sitting here
Well,
talking
get on
about.
that, Glenn.
Set here to stream us talking about Doctor Who. So.
Yeah. Speaking of streaming, the BBC iPlayer is going to be adding all of New Who back on the schedule this summer, so you can catch up before Series 11.
So our UK listeners, you can tune in there.
Of course, the Twitch is aired in the UK too, so,
Right.
You know, it's not region blocked or anything like that. In other news, slightly surprising revival with Big Finish, bringing Class back.
I'm so happy.
However, from what I've read about this, Patrick Ness isn't involved.
I don't care. I'm still
So
happy.
I'm excited that they're bringing it back. I'm a little worried they're not going to follow through with the story that was set up.
Oh, they will. It's Big Finish.
Eh,
They take
guess it
they take
depends.
nuggets from things that people set up.
maybe they'll improve on whatever
They
was planned.
picked nuggets up from 20 years ago and went on with them and without any sort of connection to the originals.
I think probably what will happen is when they say Patrick Ness wasn't involved, all it means is that Big Finish went and took his notes and said, thanks.
That's probably true.
He's just not executive producing or actively writing for the
Wait,
show.
nope.
Or are we wrong?
No, this doesn't say. Never mind.
Okay.
I saw the name Patrick Ness, but it was just saying that he created the show.
Gotcha.
But what's really cool about it also is Sophie Aldred is going to show up as Ace.
That's neat. I
That
like
is
that.
really neat.
Yeah.
And-
That's the cool thing is they will be able to do now with Doctor Who. They'll be able to do what they probably should have done a little more with Class was
Crossover.
fold in some Doctor Who, other than just having the Doctor show up and save the day in
Right.
the first episode. They should fold in some more Doctor Who.
And if I read that correctly, it's Sophie Aldred as Ace showing up in her timeline, like the day after Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yeah.
So it's obviously Coal Hill present day, but for her it's
Young
I
Ace.
was just here 40 years ago.
Young
Wow,
Ace.
it's changed.
Yeah.
So there's going to be 2 box sets of 6 adventures total for this first sets. Who knows if they sell well enough, they might do more. But the entire cast is back too.
That's the other thing that excites me is that it's not just we got these 3 people, so we'll do a Class story. No, you got everybody. That's
Yeah.
cool.
No, I think this
More
is
Miss Quill.
great. I think this is a great idea.
I'm excited to hear that you think
Yeah.
this is a great idea.
No, I think
I
it's-
genuinely am.
Well, the thing is it sits there and it waits for us now too. You know what I mean? I mean, it's there whenever we get to it. I can do some more Class when I'm back in the mood to do some more.
There you
Class.
go.
So it comes out in August of this year.
It's almost like Class would be back in session.
Yeah. I didn't see that headline anywhere. I'm disappointed with the internet.
I posted it on, or is that when you saw it?
The headline, "Class is back in session."
Oh, the actual.
I didn't see
Nobody did that?
I didn't see anybody with that phrase.
Now I kind of regret I didn't do it.
Fail, internet.
I didn't do it because I figured everybody else would have done it,
Fail,
and I was
Sean
like, you know,
Fail, Sean.
hey, you know what? I'll own it at this point. Last week was kind of all aboard the fail train anyway, so woo woo.
And the last bit of news?
The last bit of news is Lethbridge Stewart Candy Jar Books related. They've a previously unannounced story has been added to the Lethbridge Stewart lineage, which is due out this summer. We are going to see a story called Of the Future, which will finally reunite the Brig and Kate Lethbridge Stewart.
Glenn and I are over here doing our Kermit dance.
Yes.
Yay!
So that's
It was so
really
visual.
exciting.
I'm glad everybody could see that.
I am ecstatic about that. That is so cool that that's getting folded into.
Yeah.
That's so great. I love it. Thank you, Candy Jar Books. All right, let's turn to feedback.
Our feedback this week comes from Ben.
Yes. Ben writes, subject, I'm important, but not that important. Hi, guys. So you held up the show because you saw there was no feedback from me. No, don't bother to deny it. I know it's true. It's very flattering. Worthy of a song, even. Well, you got your song earlier, Ben. I'm not singing that again. Let's begin, shall we? Well, it took me longer than it should have, but I finished the trilogy that began with Annihilation. Good thing, too. I have The New Unusual waiting for me to read. I also have the movie adaptation of Annihilation to watch. As you may be peripherally aware, the movie came out the day my cast came off. Yay!
Yay!
And I was going to watch that when I got back home from getting that taken off. Unfortunately, my son also had an appointment at the same office. Between the two of us, we took up too much time for me to be able to go and get the movie. I was quite bummed. My son went back to school and wife back to work, and I was then home alone. A perfect opportunity to watch a movie that only I was interested in. Was not to be, though. Moving along, some actual Doctor Who news, kind of. In a few weeks, the theatrical release of Doctor Who happens, soon after the Blu-ray release of Season 12. I'm excited for both. Wish there were more, but that's kind of it. Hope this finds you all well. Ben. P.S. Sean, I'm number 1 in the FML League. Yeah, that looks funny.
Not anymore, Ben.
Oh, did you?
I'm number 1 this week.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you. I still don't fully understand how this
I
thing
don't
works.
either, and I'm the commissioner of this league. I don't.
So
After everybody
FML, for those
reminding
not
me,
knowing, is Fantasy Movie League.
basically you pick box office, what you think
Yeah.
the box office of certain things is going to be. And after Ben pleaded and said, "Would you start something?" Because I don't know how this works. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've been playing that." So I set up a league, and then he told me, "Hey, I made my picks." I'm like, "Okay, great." And then, well, you know, that week that I sang about. I
Picks didn't
forgot.
happen for Sean either.
Picks did not happen. And I went to log in and realized what day it was. And it was like, oh no. And I was locked out. I was like, well, not scoring any points this week.
I'm way behind, even more further behind than you, because I finally downloaded the app because
Oh, now you can join the league.
I saw all the chatter about it on Facebook, and you guys all talk about it. But I kept seeing things late and was behind, and so I'd see like a post that came later from an earlier post that I missed, and then I was lost. And so I downloaded it, and I was like, okay. And Ben put there's a league, and we'll have to get you the password. And I thought, oh, all right, I got to get a password. And then I waited and waited and waited and waited. Sean never gave me a password.
Oh, I sent it to everybody.
I didn't see it, so
Oh, it was
it's
back-
probably
it was
that's
back in one of the
just
comments.
it. It's way back in one of the
It's
comments.
way back in one of those comments. For those, if anybody wants to play with us, it's the Fantasy Movie League. You pick box office numbers based on what you think a movie's going to make over the
You
weekend.
fill up your theater, and if you are empty spots, you lose money. So you got to kind of pick, and you only have $1,000 to fill your theater up, and only so much. Each movie costs a certain amount.
Obviously, the bigger releases cost more, so you really got to balance. You're not going to be able to get Avengers and Solo and Deadpool
Right.
2. You got to kind of pick and choose
Well, you
which.
can, but that's all you get.
Some of them are so expensive you can't even.
Oh,
get
is that right? Yeah.
But so if anybody would like to play, it automatically dumps you into the FML League. I've also created a Flicks with Friends League, and the password is
You set it up.
I don't remember now what it is. It's in that
I
email
don't
that
know.
I
It's
sent
in
to
a
Glenn.
post. An email. It was in an
It
email.
was in the
No,
post.
it
It
was
was
in
a
a-
Facebook
Oh, okay.
post.
I was going to say I didn't see an email.
If you're
for sure.
interested in joining us, email Glenn. He'll get you the password.
if I can find it. All right, let's move on to our review.
Yes. The New Unusual. It's the early 1970s, a time of change, a time of turmoil, a time of surrealism, LSD in the age of Aquarius, a time of fads, moon landings, and wars, and the young people of the world are seeking something new and unusual.
I'm sorry. Title drop.
For Anne Travers, an encounter with a so-called dream egg is just the beginning of a long nightmare. Her scientific curiosity aroused, Anne begins to probe the secret underground scene known as Dream-Ins, where students and others meet to get involved with a new craze and perhaps something far more alien to human experience. And for Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, who finds himself drawn into Anne's investigations, this probe will lead him and the 5th Operational Corps to the wilderness of the Australian outback, to a little opal mining town called Coober Pedy, and a search for answers.
Bum bum bum.
The story was okay.
I liked it. Don't get me wrong. There were moments that I liked a lot, but I'm not sure on the whole that it held together for me as well as maybe what I was hoping that it would.
Yeah, I would agree. I think some parts of it are very fast-paced, which I think works to its advantage. There's not a lot of excess to the story. It's pretty bare bones. And I think to some extent that can be a good thing for it.
I think bare bones can be a good thing. And I think maybe bare bones actually served this story better because it was bare bones. I think my problem with it is it spends a lot of time getting anywhere. A lot of time. What I was grateful for is the characters that it invests me in are interesting characters.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the couple that picks Owen and what's his name? His cousin.
Oh, yeah.
You said it now.
Seriously? Okay, picks those guys up. I thought for sure you guys would rescue me there.
Yeah.
That picks those guys up, and they're on this quest to find
I
information.
keep wanting to call
on
him
this
Simon because that's what he used to be.
He was
Yeah,
Simon.
right.
That's why I can't remember his name now. Anyway, it starts with an L, right?
It's what?
It starts with an L, right?
No.
I thought it
it's,
started with a D, maybe?
Yeah, it's D, I think.
Devin?
No. Daniel? No.
Dylan.
Thank you. So they pick up Owen and Dylan, the couple in the van, and they go find that shaman. And I think all of that's great. Or shaman, not a shaman. He was a aborigine, and I think all of that's great and an interesting thing. But we spend so much time getting to places that the action of this book doesn't really happen and pick up until more than 2/3 into this thing. And so, unfortunately, we spend all this time with Bishop and Anne trying, and not for want of trying, because they do have that opening scene with Anne riding with the one guy from the 5th, and he's grabs the egg to show it to her, and he goes into the weird thing where he's trying to drive because he thinks he's flying. That's exciting. There's these little elements
and even
and
when
moments
Anne's
of
at
that.
the Dream-In and the one chick freaks out and runs off.
Right, and
they try to
yeah.
input some action there.
They do, but there are little nuggets that don't really serve much purpose other than continue to build a mystery. So there's nothing's being kind of unraveled as we go. It's still more of the same of there's something wonky about these eggs.
Right.
And so I think sometimes things are almost a little too circumstantial in this as well. The fact that he has this egg that somebody happened to give to him. Now, you have to have your MacGuffin. You have to have your thing. So the author has to give it to us some way. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. But he conveniently has this when he's writing with Anne. Anne conveniently shows up in that coffee shop where the poster is and sees that. She wasn't directed to that.
Yeah.
And so you're building a mystery with the clues being given to our inspectors instead of our inspectors roading out the clues. Now, they do that. She does meet the girl at the coffee shop who does end up putting her in touch with the right place. I think she ends up going to the university. The gal at the university ends up sending her to the Dream-In. So, yeah, we do finally have her doing some of that.
It's a bit like an Attack of the Clones mystery.
So, but we do have them often showing up in the right places. Owen and
Dylan
Dylan showing up coming across these two in the desert on their journey across the outback, conveniently at the same time that Anne's figuring this out, and all of this started in Australia.
A lot of
so
that, at least to me, came across as a kind of flashback because it all obviously happens before some of it's happened parallel.
you're right,
but,
because he makes the phone call and then we hear Dylan, but that's just so that they can fill us in what happened there.
Right.
It's still happening at the same time.
Right.
I mean, it's within the span of a few weeks, so that's all at the same time. I mean, it was just a little too convenient for me. But again, we spend a lot of time getting our crew to where this is actually at, and it's just it's a little too circumstantial for me.
Part of that has to do with the setting. We are in the wilds of Australia. We are not just in Australia.
Which is cool.
We are in the
I liked
outback.
that.
Yeah.
I like
liked
Australia.
that.
I have a thing for Australia. So, okay, we're going to go to Australia. An unfortunate thing about Australia is, you got to drive for 3 days before you get anywhere. It's just that big.
And you got to figure out a reason to get them down there, too.
And so consequently, you have a lot of Lawrence of Arabia. You have a lot of big, gargantuan, wide shots.
They did a great
desert.
job.
No,
covering
and
that.
I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I completely disagree with you. Once we get to Australia, we don't
Things
spend
pick
as
up
much
the
time in
pace.
the outback. It does start to pick up, and we don't have these long, drawn out from town to town to town.
It took them 3 days to get.
It did take them 3 days,
you know.
but we only stopped once in that thing.
Well,
There's a lot of times where I was
don't spend the time
surprised
in the car
that we
with
pick
them.
up and we're already at the next town. So that I was fine with, because
Even
you're
the
right.
stuff with
It is
Dylan, I
expensive.
thought they moved pretty quickly because when you are spending time with them traveling before they get to their destination, it's either character building for these two hippies or building the mystery of the eggs or building Owen's draw to the egg and what his connection is going to be to it. They do a good job whenever they're in the outback.
What I'm saying, what's drawn out is the
getting to the outback.
No, it's not even getting to the outback. It's getting to the plot. There's a lot of drawn out. We're building a mystery of something that it's already mysterious. We don't have to build on it that much. Let's just get there and figure out what's going on. And so it's the story that's long and drawn out. It's not the getting from place to place. I didn't feel like that took forever to get places because I thought that paced out really well. I was surprised we didn't spend 2 or 3 chapters on in-betweens. We didn't do that. The problem is there's too much of nothing going on, and that's the problem.
I think maybe it just compounded it for me because I agree with you that the bits with Anne and the bits with Owen and Dylan both coming to eggs on completely separate continents seems a little...
And that they were only distributed to Scotland.
It just,
of all the world, that's where they decided to
it was a little
distribute
too
to.
pat. It's like you could have had Dylan and Owen stumble across one of these and make a phone call and maybe even ship it. And that would have cut out a good chunk of the unnecessary running around. But then we wouldn't have had the big action scenes at the end of the book that happened to take place in Scotland, which I'll get to later. But
Which were fantastic.
For some of us, I think coupled with that whole running around not really getting anywhere while we're trying to build that mystery, to then get to the outback and take what felt like a longer chunk of time to get somewhere because we're building that mystery. We're building the character. We're building the development. We're trying to figure out the egg or the shaman or we're going to go over here because the mining company's got this and it's going to take us. It just felt like, oh, hurry up and get on with it. Just hurry up and get on with it. It just, like I said, I'm a huge Australia nut, but even I was like, okay, this is starting to wear thin. And I loved the characters. Thank God that we had an interesting group of characters tagging along
the
in
characters are
these journeys
Well, some
because
great new ones, too.
and
That
whether they were
Australian
new or
leader
old,
was
yeah,
great.
the Australian leader was fantastic.
One of the other thing that lends to that whole taking a long time is I would love for them to explore Owen and Dylan's relationship more. Unfortunately, this book does a lot of Owen convincing Dylan to go along and Dylan deciding I don't want to do it, and then Owen convincing him to go ahead and do it, and then Dylan complaining about it, and then Dylan going along with it, and then Owen convincing him to go along with it, and then Dylan backing out, and then they just have this weird dynamic that I think should have been done differently than it was.
It's a lover's quarrel without being a lover's quarrel.
I
It's
love
really-
that. I love that they're having a quote unquote lover's quarrel. There's no dynamic to it. It's just
We've been off the grid with Owen for long enough that we're not quite sure. We don't get. I don't feel like we got enough of a flashback, kind of establishing what he and Dylan had been up to before we're dropped off in the desert with them. Just that they've been traveling.
And we don't get enough of the other side of the quarrel where they're getting along.
Right. That's the other part of it.
It feels
which
like
would have been nice to have.
That's a good
quarrel.
point. Yeah.
Because if we'd had,
which was the interesting part I wanted to see, them getting along, not.
If we'd had that side of the coin, then maybe this part would have felt a little differently.
Agreed.
I also, so we get to the mining town. I'm going to skip toward the end because this is where, for me, I felt like this was where it was really. The book did pick up the pacing of it and the stuff. It picked up toward the end, and it really did kind of sprint toward the finish, and then it reached the finish, and then we did that. Here's 3-page wrap up of some of the stuff, and it was like
we didn't even 3-page wrap up. It almost feels like we cut the story off.
Yeah, we're just done. Which I was like, well, I could have used a little less of this and a little more of that. Not necessarily that you didn't explain things properly to me. Just it feels very truncated at the end.
I guess I don't feel like there was needed a lot to be wrapped up. I mean, the resolution was kind of, it's them getting back to the UK now at this point. The spaceship was destroyed. It destroyed all of these tunnels and stuff, and this community is going to have to rebuild. But it's not like most of the wrap up needed to happen back in the UK with the containment of the eggs that were still out there and the fallout that happened there. Not
we
so
didn't
much
get it.
Yeah,
that's the point.
But
that's the point.
I guess it feels like
we cut the story off, and it's like I felt like, okay, what's happening back
to
home?
the UK instead of leaving them in
where's
Australia?
the cleanup? And if you're going to do that, have our people fly home and then get there and explain what we've been doing in the meantime. Not end it right there in the desert before we've gone back and seen the repercussions. I mean, that seemed.
It felt like it was. Oh, we got to get Playing Dead in this to fit better.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll get to Playing Dead.
We'll get to that too.
I think the other thing that I had a problem with was the characterization of the brig. Almost felt sloppy.
It was almost like we didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah,
we start off and he's working on paperwork again. And I mean, no offense to the Katie J. Line or the Lethbridge Stewart authors, but if I read one more chapter of the brig doing paperwork, I'm going to scream. He is a man of action.
At least he is.
Give him something to do.
No, I think they did that okay because every time that they showed him doing paperwork, he was complaining about it and
he was itching to do something else.
Yeah, there you go. Itching to get out of the office and do
that.
It. And so I kind of liked that.
Before.
Not to this extent.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing thing to where
not in this series we haven't. We've gotten that kind of in other Doctor Who materials.
I think in general, I feel like I've read a lot of the brig doing paperwork, and it's a.
He's always interrupted doing paperwork.
It's like in the vernacular. I'll go back to my fallback on Star Trek books. Kirk's doing paperwork or something. It's a standard setup for a character that you're not quite sure how you're going to introduce them into the story yet. That's what it feels like. It feels like we had this thing with Anne, and we've got this thing with Owen. I keep hitting this. I'm sorry.
I'm going to take and just curl that. You don't even need that, so that's going to come completely out of that thing.
It should just go away. But we've got the Anne story and we've got the Owen story. And eventually the brig's going to have to deal with this. But it kind of felt like, well, we need to check in on the brig. And so here's a chapter of him doing this. Okay. Oh, and then Anne's going to report to him. What have you found? Nothing. Just hurry up and get there. There were just a lot of those little admin things. It's like, I don't need this. You could have just, let's hurry up and move on. But then when it got good, when it got to the end with the spaceship, then all of a sudden it was like, well, what are we going to do? Let's blow a hole in the door. I mean, yes, that's very brig, don't get me wrong, but then later we reveal that there is a door, and it's like...
Well, then
all you had to do was look a little harder.
He figures out how to get into the ship from underneath it when he crawls back from the cabin, which was absolutely useless. And the fact that he gets knocked down there, because we know he's not going to die, so you can't put him in that kind of peril and do a cliffhanger thing like, oh no, well, the brig has died. Nobody's going to buy that. Yeah. So you end the chapter that way, and then you know he's going to wake up down there. And then, so that's completely unnecessary because, okay, we've put him out of the action, but it didn't matter we put him out of the action because everybody else has already retreated. So I mean, they've already been overwhelmed. The brig gets to go in, sneak into the ship, walk around. He's going to blow the thing up from inside, but then realizes, well, that isn't going to work. Or he's going to do something from the inside to set it off. Well, then he realizes that isn't going to work. So then he ends up having to leave the ship to go regroup with everybody. He's done a whole bunch of nothing at this point for 3 chapters.
We spent a long time getting down the caves into the spaceship. And then the brig gets knocked down a hole. And then the aliens come, and we have to leave the spaceship. And then the brig gets back into the spaceship and wanders around. And then he leaves the spaceship. Meanwhile, our other group of people decided to go back to the spaceship, but we're going to bring the bombs this time. And the brig meets up with them. And then we all go back to the spaceship. And it's like, oh, for Pete's sake.
I agree.
There's so much chess pieces moving around on this board. It's like, and again, it's not that it's bad, because I was compelled. I want to see how this turns out. You've got me. But just let's move it along a little bit. And so then, we get to the thing. And, of course, once the trigger's been damaged on the thing, it's like, well, the Aussie guy is going to bite it. Yeah. You introduce this really cool character and then kill him off. And then they do. They blow up in true Silurian fashion. We blew up the spaceship and the caverns and the whole shebang.
But at
the end,
unlike the Silurians, they really didn't have much other option.
No, they really didn't.
No, they didn't. I agree with that.
I did appreciate the fact. I think they got it just a little backwards. I would have liked for somebody in the scientific community or on the team to introduce themselves and say, "Hi, we come in peace," this kind of stuff, instead of immediately starting with the confrontation and then going, "Well, we didn't mean to hurt the guy. We're sorry." But it was kind of like, you're kind of okay. You're new at this. I'll let you have that one.
I thought the same thing. I thought that really feels odd that now you have just completely turned this one species to dust in this pod, and then when everybody else wakes up, oh, sorry about that, chap. I mean, it was just that seemed weird. But
and
by the way,
Bishop,
we have a cleanup on aisle 4. I didn't touch it, but there's a thing here. You should.
Bishop, who's at least familiar with sci-fi stories, should know better.
No,
that's true.
If anybody, he should have been like, we need to not do that.
Bishop has some fantastic, real practical knowledge for these situations, and it never comes out. It's never part of the payoff.
Practical and fictional.
I know.
I think the other thing that's unexplored is the fact that Anne had this dream where she talked to her father, who conveyed to her that always rely that Bill will always be there for you, which is great, but why didn't the eggs affect her differently? Why didn't she age when she went through them? I get the impression it's because her father was there protecting her, but it was almost like we did that for a purpose later on that was never explored.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like that was unfinished.
Well, the aging part came later, didn't it? That wasn't that early.
No, the one guy initially.
But that was...
They went to visit the first guy that had got it. He had arthritis because he had already aged. And imagine it had to do with how long you had contact with the eggs.
Right.
But
that's how I walk away from that aspect of it. Is she just wasn't holding it for very long.
And then I'm a
neither
little
was the guy that she rode with, the driver that I can't remember his name. He only had it for a short time, but they determined that he had aged a lot too when they looked at his. When they finally, what's the doctor's name? Lindsay or whatever the guy's name is, the doctor,
the medical doctor,
the medical doctor that they've actually brought into this,
which I like, by the way. I appreciate the fact that we have a medical doctor. That's not just Anne.
He's determined that there was something that had caused it. So where's Anne's aging, and why didn't it affect her? Why haven't we addressed it yet? I suppose.
I'm also a little concerned about the kind of dropped line at the end that Owen's back on the astral plane.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring him home. Now I don't remember if they dealt with this earlier, but I don't know much about astral plane projection, but I would think that moving the body is usually a bad thing, because how are they going to get back to it? Isn't that a concern?
I think the astral plane is such a third level location.
Like if you left your body, you'd be able to...
You could find it wherever you were.
But that's just it. He won't be there.
No, you can find it wherever the body
the body was. Yeah. Okay. For me, that seems like that's a concern.
I think you're being a little too literal with
I can't find my car in the parking lot if I don't put it in a certain area. So here I am off traveling, and then I come back. It's like, who moved my body? I would be upset. That's all I'm saying.
It's funny that you're talking about this, because there's actually an A My Peace Giant song. called "I Left My Body," and I can't remember some of the lyrics, but I left my body, but I don't know, but I can't find it.
Are you going to put that playlist together for me at some
I
point
really
so
ought
that
to,
I can join in on these jokes and not feel like I'm stealing somebody else's material after the fact? Nobody's concerned about that.
I left my
See, I guess I imagine it more like Frighteners, where they're just automatically drawn back to their body.
Oh, okay.
I've always sort of
Fixed.
I've always read that
Magnetic pole. or
I've always
something?
read that some of the religions and spiritual people that believe in astral projection always imagine, or it's always conveyed that there's a band connecting you. It's almost like a rubber band
Right,
connecting you to your spirit.
Okay.
And as long as that isn't severed by death, then you're always connected to your physical body. So if you picked somebody up and moved them clear across the globe, you would still be attached to your physical presence. So,
Okay.
Because the astral plane also isn't just like there; it's everywhere.
Well, yeah, it's the cloud.
it's the cloud.
It is the cloud.
That's right. You can still connect to the cloud.
I've
in the
uploaded
UK.
to the cloud. Let's talk about this fiasco in Scotland.
Wait, I wanted to say real quick that I really liked Anne and Bill throughout the entire book.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Their budding relationship is fantastic.
that's
that was
one
some of my
that
favorite
is
stuff.
one of the
in book.
highlights of this book. I think is that it really starts to establish the relationship even more. It
Yeah.
broadens it. It builds on it. It really gets a lot.
The two of them
yeah.
together are just fantastic.
Agreed.
They have
Frustra-
such great chemistry.
makes it almost the more frustrating that we get the budding of that relationship, but we don't get anything with Owen and Dylan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the two sides of the same kind of thing. But
I think there could have been a nice balance where you were doing that with both sets of characters as you were delivering us to the big climax of the story. Is you could have had both of them having as good of a developing relationship, just back and forth, and going between the two. They did a really good job with Anne and Bishop, but didn't do a good job with Owen and Dylan. So, maybe there's just not enough room. The real quick though, I'll just say this before we get into that. The long and the short of this is, we have said many times, we've read a short story and said, well, that really should have been fleshed out into a longer piece. This is a long story that should have been fleshed out into a smaller piece. I think this would have been a terrific story as either a short story or even a novella. I think if this would have been trimmed down and made a lot shorter, I think if we'd have taken a lot of those elements of trying to, it almost feels like we're writing a lot of words to get to the 180 some page mark, and it's not even that. It's or 280 some page mark,
Yeah,
and it's not even
shorter.
that. It is shorter. It ends up
it
being
felt
shorter.
longer, quite honestly.
It's only 256
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
So
Even with the blurb in
well,
the
that's
back.
with the blurbs. So
And the
short
short.
story. So I think that this one should have been probably a short story, or maybe a little longer than a short story. But I think that there's a lot of good ideas and elements here. The problem is when you set all of the big action at the very end, and not pepper anything out, with the exception of some anecdotal stuff with the egg.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately that's what drew it out. But let's talk about what's going on in Scotland.
Well, as the lone survivor, Keith, you want to take this?
I'm the only one who lives.
I think
I did not expect those deaths.
I'm going to go on record and say not a fan.
I will say
I'm
right
okay with
now. I'll say right now. I was not surprised. I was not surprised
Well,
in
we
the
knew that
least. And here's the reason
some
being.
of us
I
We'd
think
already survived an earthquake.
I'm not even. Well, that's what it boils down to. I wasn't even upset when it happened, because I kind of thought, because that's our namesake character. We've kind of been attached to him for a while, but I wasn't upset or even shocked when it happened.
was a
Well,
little
I was
shocked how it
shocked.
happened.
I was shocked how it
How it
happened.
happened.
I wasn't shocked that
For
it happened.
both.
I suppose I should say. But I think because I was preparing myself for it in the last time that this happened, I think that anticipation of it made it even worse than the surprise of it in this one. And the other thing that I was okay with the fact is it really kind of feels like, and I think they need to do this, it feels like they're doing some house cleaning. I think they have to clean
Yeah.
up some peripheral characters, especially since this idea of a story arc is kind of coming to an end and we're starting anew and starting some new ideas. And I think that's okay. And I think that those character deaths can be necessary, and the way that they happen can be impactful. However, they're very empty now, because I wanted, if you're going to have some action going on here with some consequence here, I want Evans, who's playing a large active role in this, to have a little more responsibility or something more to do, rather than sit there and convey to the reader all of the chaos that's going on, because that's all that this is just to show us that there's chaos going on with the eggs elsewhere. You could have told me that in about 8 pages, but to spread it out and have all these things happening that are quite tragic and scary things, and have nobody in there doing any sort of heroics or trying to make an effort other than standing back and
Miles
gosh
tried to
darn
help
it,
a little bit.
Evans, he completely starts to we have built
Evans was
we have
useless.
built Evans up, and we haven't built him up, but they've built the character, they've grown the character. He's a lot more reliable, he's a lot more not self-deprecating anymore. What am I looking for? He's more sure of himself. And suddenly, maybe just me, it kind of felt like he was reverting or regressing
Felt like
back
he
to
slid
old
back.
Evans. And I
Yeah.
thought, you can't slip this character back. You've grown them so much. Don't revert them back to what they were.
This Evans very much felt like early Evans.
It did,
It was
and
an
that
Evans
was-
who didn't want the responsibility, didn't want to make the
Yes,
decision.
that was a misstep.
And I can see, even with the promotion, even with the self-confidence, I can see Evans not wanting to make the call.
Yes, agreed.
But he's got to make that call.
Agreed.
Right.
And if you take that out of his hands by some, I don't even remember who it was that showed up. It was another kind of peripheral,
Well, it
no-name character, wasn't
yeah.
it, that showed up to take care of that particular element of it?
Well, he was waiting on Young Husband, wasn't he, to show up?
No.
That was what
I
was coming.
don't think it was young. It was somebody that I wasn't familiar with, that at least that
Oh,
I
maybe.
think of.
Well, and
Yeah.
even the guy that showed up to help they didn't resolve anything.
Yeah,
there.
I mean,
what
because it was all
happening
wound
in
up that happening in
Australia.
Australia that wound up taking
Yeah.
care. But just the fact that this guy makes the call, okay, take aim, and again, at no point did we try to knock an egg out of somebody's hand.
Right, that's
at no
what the
point
problem
did we
was I
shoot him in
had.
the leg.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know,
and shot the one egg when she did the experiment and destroyed it.
Yep.
Causing the end of it. Just shoot the eggs the entire time.
To make that successful, because you still have to have repercussion and fallout, and I understand you
Right.
have to. But what you do to make that even more compelling and interesting to the reader is you give instead of Owen cutting the circuit and everything going back to normal, everybody going, oh, okay, everything's good, everything's fine. What you do is you have somebody on the ground there feel like they're making some effort, and then things go out of hand. That's the problem, is it was misplaced, because it was like the lights came on, or the lights went out, and then, oh, good, the lights came on, everything's okay, and then the lights go back out again.
Right.
And that's all that is. This is all this is. And it was frustrating that we have all of this action going down here that is causing repercussions for what's going on here, but we have nobody really feeling it. It's almost like when the command's away, these guys are a bunch of bumbling idiots, can't do anything on their own. That's what it felt like, and it shouldn't. The fifth should not feel that way.
the fifth should not feel that way, and Evans in particular. Like I said, if this story was set earlier, then I can buy it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, as big a problem with it then, because that's very much in Evans' nature. But now that we have, I'm sorry, because I know Evans was never meant to stick around this
I know,
long.
I know.
But if you're
But you've
going to
done
use
that.
him,
Yeah, you've done it.
Once
got
you've
to
done
use him
it,
properly.
yeah.
If you're going to have somebody else, if you're going to have somebody act this way, don't use Evans.
Don't use Evans, use
Is
somebody
kind of
else,
the
yeah.
the
And it's
key response
had they
there.
brought Evans in and they decided, okay, we're done with Evans' character, and we want to do again. It feels like there's some house cleaning going on here. If we decide we're going to sideline Evans, either you don't inject him into this situation,
Right, use somebody
or
else or
you
create a new
inject him into this
character.
situation, give him a moment, and then dispatch of him. You know,
Yeah.
that's what you have to do here. And I
Right.
just felt like there was just a lot that. Everything that was going on here was useless. So that I think could have been done with no-name characters. Again, I think Collins and Bartlett, and even Miles, were useful characters.
Oh yeah, they
here.
were totally the heroes of this.
No,
situation.
I don't think they had to be heroes. No, don't get me wrong.
But they were.
Don't get me wrong. Those are the ones that could have been easily dispatched here, because they
Right.
aren't characters that other mainstream readers have grown attached to. The other thing that I thought was interesting was to give Major Bartlett some backstory that we never even heard about, and then before we kill him, that seemed like
Yeah.
either shoot him in the head and kill him, or don't and build on the backstory, or give some backstory earlier on so that the death feels more emotional. But to try to do it right there at the moment of it happening,
Yeah, that
that
was a bit
just
odd.
felt weird. But I don't want it to make it sound like that I was upset with the death, because again, not surprised, and really can understand and sympathetic with the fact that there are some places you're going to have to clean up so that you can progress stories later on and not have to keep bringing up Bartlett.
And let's be honest,
It did lead to the bizarrest experience I've ever had reading a book where my name is shown, where he says, Keith. It says, Keith, Miles shouted.
Yeah, I saw that. I wondered how that felt. Keith
Whoa.
Miles shouted.
It
Keith
took
Miles
me
shouted.
I had to read it several times to read it correctly.
And let's be honest, okay? If you're going to cut the dead weight loose, we start with Bartlett.
He has been around the longest.
He's been around the
He's been
longest.
around the
And
longest.
I'm actually that was another thing is I thought, well, it kind of makes sense that he goes out first too.
And if it's going to go down, we totally know he's going to shoot you
in the head.
in the head. That was...
I just like
Yeah.
how you finally showed up and got aged nearly to
I
death.
know!
You've only got another week left of your life.
I was like, hooray, I'm in the... Oh, I'm gone. So, for the record, no, I don't think any of us are upset over
No,
this.
not at
Keith
all.
especially is not upset over this.
Definitely
but
not.
While we've been play acting a wounded hearts,
Yeah.
at least on my end, I've been play acting that a lot online, but I'm not. I agree with you. It was
Keith gets a
hoot.
chance to move on in another book too.
Yeah.
So.
quite accidentally, apparently. Did that part of the online thing?
I don't know if I saw that.
I have.
Clearly, there were more plans, or there was something that had been written that.
The nugget had been dropped that all three of us were going to buy the farm in this book.
Oh.
Until it was remembered that you are in a short story later.
Miles is in a short story after this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were saved by virtue of accident.
Whoopsie.
We're going to call it serendipity and say it was planned. No. I like I said, I had a lot of fun with that. So then, yeah, I was a little impacted by it. Not in a, I can't believe he killed us. More in a, aw. Especially you, the backstory. You're Bartlett.
My namesake.
The backstory was like, aw. Now I kind of want to know more about that.
Yeah.
But never fear, I'm working on that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. This is all the more reason for
Just a
Sean to
little
go
nugget
into
for
a
Sean to jump off of.
Oh, it's coming.
because you can write anything you want that happened before this. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I even saw there's a title page. So
Yeah.
We'll do it in conjunction with Candy Jar and make it a free Patreon exclusive. Here's
There you go.
Here's some fan fiction that they said it was okay for me to go into.
overall, just as a final synopsis of this, again, I think that the long and short of this, if this could have been shortened down, it's a terrific idea. It's a good story. There are some great characters in it, and I think the Bill and Anne exploration is good, is very good, is much better. Feel like a lot of loose ends, and it feels like a lot of forced plot, but overall, I think I gave it 3 stars, which I think I would stick with. Sometimes I come here and I talk myself into a higher rating or a lower rating, and I think I'll land right where I left it. It's not a bad book, it's not a bad story. It just feels like it takes a long time to get to where it needs to go.
Yeah, and needed more wrap-up.
And a little more wrap-up would have been nice. Because I don't think we can count Playing Dead as wrap-up.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Playing Dead, because this is the Redux, which they kind of went in and they juiced it up a bit, because this came out in Havoc Files 2.
Yeah.
It's tweaked a little bit to kind of maybe tie in a little more. With the exception of adding some location names and a few backstory drop
References
nuggets,
to where
I didn't
they
notice
were.
any difference in this.
I didn't either.
And it didn't improve upon the story that I can't remember some of the issues that I said I had issues with before, but I suspect they're the same as they I have now. Is we go into this dream machine and it's aliens that are basically testing our resilience. I think the difference is when they get out of there, isn't it the fifth that's there to rescue them? But this time it's not. They end up getting out themselves
now that
and
you say
going
that, I
on
think I
to.
remember the
It seems
fifth
like the
showing
fifth
up.
shows up.
Lethbridge Stewart still shows up at the end of both.
He
I
does,
thought, yeah,
but it's shortly after the events, after they've rescued them.
Right.
Whereas here they got out on their own and went back to that town in Australia. I can't remember, Alice Springs. And that's when they relayed the information to him. So that was the biggest change I felt. Other than, again, there was some locational stuff that I think was added.
And if this isn't the change, but it almost undercuts this story, is the Bill and Anne relationship building. because when I first read the story, it felt like, oh, they're finally going to go on their first date.
Yep.
And now it's just a date.
Yep.
When
just
they get back,
a date.
that
Yeah.
she needs a drink. Oh,
So it changed the dynamic of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if they added more to him having her key or vice versa at the beginning of the story. I don't remember if that was there at all.
I think it was there.
So it changes the context of that, of them having swapping keys to the hotel room,
Right.
and then it also changes the first part changes the context in a good way.
Yes.
And then the end change context is not in a good way.
Right.
I don't think.
I'll be honest. I didn't go back and reread Playing Dead from the original.
Yeah, I did
edit.
read the original.
I did read Redux, and
I didn't reread the
other
original.
than a handful of things that it really felt like, I don't want to say were shoehorned in, but things that very much felt like, well, we added this specifically to, and because I'm just coming off of New Unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a reference to New Unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a reference to New Unusual. So there were a couple of things that were very much here.
And-
This is
and
where this is set. This is when this is set. This is this. But the overall story of Playing Dead
Stays the same.
stays the
Stays
same,
the same.
and it still
Yeah.
didn't work for me.
Yeah, it still doesn't work.
And
for me either.
unfortunately, the other added problem with that is that now that we've done New Unusual, which had an actual alien invasion presence, then we immediately follow that up with another alien invasion presence,
with a covert alien invasion presence.
trying to manipulate people's minds.
Oh, wait a minute. This usually was a covert alien invasion.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same
plan.
idea.
So it feels like, wow, not only can Bill and Ann not catch a break, it's the same break they can't catch.
Yeah, that's
So,
a good point.
Well, and even then, what they did add to tie it in the New Unusual didn't feel like it was absolutely necessary. From what I remembered of the story, of course, I'm just going off memory. I didn't reread the original,
Right.
but as soon as the New Unusual ended, I thought, oh, okay, so that's kind of how that fits in. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
just
necessarily
the fact
need
that
a-
they're in Australia. Okay, that's the tie-in.
Yeah, that's
that's
all I
enough for
needed.
me to know
Yeah.
that this was where this was at. But
Right, exactly.
yeah, it's I don't know. It was a good attempt, but it didn't quite get there for me. I still think it's kind of a sluggish, strange, outside the box Lethbridge Stewart story that doesn't really.
Well,
I say outside the box in a bad way.
It's
but-
outside the box, but I think what works for it being outside the box is the fact that they are in this like matrix. That was another thing. I don't think they brought up the whole. She didn't explain the dream matrix thing as much, and I don't remember her dropping the word matrix in the first story.
No.
I think that was expounded
That
on
might
a
have
little
been
bit, which
added.
was okay.
Yeah.
But them being in a matrix, I think, made it
remember them
okay to
going
be
back
out of
into it.
out of the unusual for it. So
Right,
I think
yeah.
that gave it a reason for it to be unique and different. But it's still just I'm not sold on the story that well. But
So there's that.
Yeah.
all right, well, we got coming up on the schedule, Sean.
Well, coming up on the schedule.
Because now we have to shift everything since we missed a week.
Not really. Was
Not
that-
really?
No.
We're doubling up next week?
No, it's
Oh.
it's still the same. We didn't
Well,
do
we
it.
just shifted it a week. though,
You're
is what I'm
saying shifting it a week, but it's
Well, on the schedule
the-
says
the-
this week, and no, it doesn't. It just says
doesn't
what
say
number,
dates
doesn't
anymore.
it? Yeah, you're right.
because we're not doing
You took
Friday
the
Night
dates
Who,
out.
so there's
Good
no
job.
dates. It's just numbers.
Good job.
So consequently, the schedule stays the same. It's just a week later than it was, and you don't know.
Very good.
Except
So
for the fact we pointed it out.
yeah, well now now it's a thing. Thanks, Glenn. All my hard work goes out the window because you want to talk about it being a thing. So next week we are going to talk some Big Finish. We're doing some Companion Chronicles. And let me get to the schedule so that I can actually give you the proper ones. We're doing, these are both, I believe, Series 3 of the Companion Chronicles. The Magician's Oath, which is story number 10. Oh, no, it's Series 3, number 10, The Magician's Oath, and Series 4, number 3, The Prisoner of Peladon. Just because I felt like we hadn't done anything in the Third Doctor era for a while, and both of these kind of fit in that era. So we'll be listening to those and then reviewing them on the cast next week. The following week is another Big Finish, but we're back in the main line with The Bride of Peladon. And the end of an era, in a way. And then we will return in episode 387 with another Lethbridge Stewart book, The Man from Yesterday by Nick Walters, which we had bumped from previously in order to fit New Unusual chronologically where it belongs. So we're getting to that.
Very
So 3
good.
weeks till Man from
3 weeks
Yesterday.
till Man from Yesterday. So set your calendars and Do your stuff. Speaking of books, I did see the poll for the Goodreads Book Club has posted for the new month, so go and make your selections there. I have not had a chance to look, so I don't know what's up.
Neither.
It's some of the new Target novelizations.
Oh, is that what it is? Cool.
Yeah. So I think what was the Christmas? Once Upon a Christmas is
And the
on there,
June book is chosen, which is Rose.
Yes. So. All right, very good. Well, also please consider supporting Traveling the Vortex if you can. We do have a Patreon support. You can become a patron of the podcast just by going to the link on our webpage, travelingthevortex.com. Every bit of what you donate to us does go into this show, 100% in order to keep it going and hopefully not missing weeks.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right. Anything else we need to talk about? Keith, you want to tell them how to contact us?
Yeah, just go to while you're there giving us your money, you can fill out the Send Us Feedback tab, or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. Of course, reach out to us on any form of social media and, join our the discussion there.
Very good. Anything else we need to talk about this week?
That'll do.
If not, until next time, in case we miss a week again, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
I'm never living this down.
Be seeing you.
Do you like The Wizard of Oz?
Hopefully next week.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.